It's May 27, 1991, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Three women are walking down North 25th Street when they spot something that stops them cold. A young man is sitting on the sidewalk, naked, bleeding, and disoriented. He can barely stand or speak. The women call the police. Officers arrive within minutes. Then a man walks up. He's calm, well-spoken, polite. He tells the officers the young man is his boyfriend. They'd had a fight, he says. Too much to drink. Nothing more to it. The officers believe him. They help walk the disoriented young man back into the apartment building, hand him over to the man waiting at the door, and leave without a second thought. That young man was 14 years old. His name was Conorak Synthesomphone. The man the police handed him back to was Jeffrey Dahmer. Conorak would be dead within hours. This is the story of one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. But it's also the story of every single moment someone could have stopped him and didn't. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. To the outside world, his early childhood looked ordinary. He grew up in a middle-class family, moved around Ohio as a kid, and by most accounts was a quiet, shy boy. But those close to him later described someone who grew more withdrawn with time, especially as his parents' marriage began falling apart during his teenage years. Dahmer later told investigators that disturbing thoughts and impulses had been building in him since adolescence, long before he ever acted on them. He also started drinking heavily by age 14. By the time he graduated high school in 1978, alcohol had already become a serious problem. Just weeks after graduation, Dahmer picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks near his family's home in Bath Township, Ohio. Hicks became his first victim. Dahmer was 18 years old. And then, strangely, nothing happened for almost a decade. Dahmer enlisted in the Army later that year and was stationed in Germany. His drinking continued, and in 1981, the Army discharged him. He moved back to Ohio, then eventually to Milwaukee, where he lived for a time with his grandmother. Throughout the 1980s, Dahmer accumulated a string of arrests, disorderly conduct, indecent exposure. In 1988, he was arrested for drugging and sexually assaulting a 13-year-old boy. He was convicted and received probation, along with a requirement to register as a sex offender. Dahmer later said the urge to kill again never went away during those 9 quiet years. What was missing, he claimed, was opportunity. Starting in 1987, that changed. And over the next 4 years, opportunity is exactly what Milwaukee kept handing him. Dahmer's method relied on a chilling kind of ordinariness. He didn't look like anyone's idea of a monster. He was soft-spoken, neatly dressed, and described by acquaintances as polite, even likable, in brief encounters. He approached men, mostly at gay bars and clubs around Milwaukee, often men who were young, alone, and on the margins of mainstream society. Some were runaways, some were struggling with addiction, many were Black, Asian, or Latino, from communities whose disappearances, as later reporting would show, weren't always investigated with the same urgency as others. Dahmer's approach was almost always the same. He'd offer money for a man to pose for photographs, or simply invite someone back to his apartment to drink and watch a movie. Once there, he drugged their drinks. Between 1987 and 1991, Dahmer killed 16 men and boys in Wisconsin, most of them in his apartment at 924 North 25th Street. Combined with Stephen Hicks in Ohio, his total confirmed victim count reached 17. He kept photographs and detailed records of what happened to their remains, evidence that would later horrify even experienced homicide investigators and the FBI forensic team eventually brought in to help process the scene. What makes this case especially disturbing isn't only the killings themselves. It's how many separate chances the system had to stop him, and how many times it looked the other way instead. Starting in 1990, a woman named Glenda Cleveland, who lived near Dahmer's building, began repeatedly calling police to report disturbing smells and strange sounds. Her complaints were largely brushed aside. Then came Conorak Synthesomphone, the young man from our cold open, in May of 1991. His disappearance had already been connected to Dahmer once before, in a case that police failed to fully investigate. And now, found bleeding and barely conscious on the street, he was returned directly into Dahmer's hands, dismissed by responding officers as nothing more than a domestic dispute between two adults. He was murdered soon after they left. 2 more men would die in the 2 months that followed. It would take one final victim finding a way to fight back before any of it stopped. On the night of July 22, 1991, a man named Tracy Edwards found himself handcuffed inside Dahmer's apartment, a knife held to him as a threat. In a moment investigators would later describe as the turning point of the entire case, Edwards managed to fight back, break free of the handcuff, and run out into the street. He flagged down 2 patrol officers, still wearing one cuff, and told them what had just happened to him inside that building. This time, the officers didn't dismiss it. They walked back with Edwards to apartment 213. What they found inside would become one of the most shocking crime scenes in American criminal history. Photographs documenting dismembered victims, preserved human remains, a refrigerator that responding officers would later describe as almost impossible to process, even for seasoned homicide detectives. Dahmer didn't resist. According to officers on scene, he simply said that for what he'd done, he should be dead. The FBI was brought in to assist with forensic processing, an unusual step for what had, until that night, been treated purely as a local Milwaukee matter. It tells you just how overwhelming that single apartment turned out to be. Dahmer was finally in custody. But for the city of Milwaukee, the hardest part of this story was only just beginning. Word of the arrest spread fast, and public reaction was immediate. This wasn't just horror at what had happened inside that apartment. It was outrage, especially from Milwaukee's Black and LGBTQ communities, over exactly how long it had taken authorities to act, and how many earlier warnings, like Glenda Cleveland's repeated calls and the Synthosamphone incident, had simply been ignored. Dahmer was charged with 15 counts of first-degree murder in Wisconsin, a 16th killing, the very first, in Ohio back in 1978, would be handled separately by Ohio authorities. A 17th suspected victim was never charged because the body was never recovered. On January 13, 1992, Dahmer changed his plea from not guilty to guilty but insane. That single decision reshaped the entire trial. Instead of a jury deciding whether he had committed the murders, which was no longer in question, they would decide only one thing: whether Dahmer had been legally sane at the time he committed them. Under Wisconsin law at the time, that verdict didn't even need to be unanimous. Only 10 of the 12 jurors needed to agree. The trial began on January 30, 1992, in front of Judge Lawrence Graham, Jr. Over roughly 2 weeks, jurors heard extensive testimony, including from psychiatric experts on both sides. The defense argued Dahmer suffered from serious mental illness, pointing to years of escalating, deeply disturbed behavior as evidence he couldn't fully control his actions. Prosecutors countered with something harder to explain away: Dahmer's careful planning. He'd purchased specific chemicals. He'd taken photographs methodically. He'd hidden evidence and evaded detection for years. That, prosecutors argued, wasn't the behavior of someone who didn't understand what he was doing. The court also heard emotional victim impact statements from grieving family members, testimony that, according to those in the courtroom, brought raw, visible anguish into a case that had already dominated headlines nationwide. On February 15, 1992, the jury reached its verdict. By a preponderance of the evidence, they found that Dahmer had not suffered from a mental disease or defect at the time of the murders. He was legally sane. 2 days later, at sentencing, Dahmer addressed the court directly. He said he took full blame for what he had done, and that his case had never been about trying to go free. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, a sentence amounting to hundreds of years in prison.